purpose of this session is to discuss the costing capabilities within Vicinity to allow a brewery to determine the theoretical cost of production and packaging of beer. Specifically, I'll use the component cost roll-up tool within Vicinity, analyzing the details of a cost of a single SKU. In this case, I'm limiting our view into a beer VicinityBrew IPA 12-ounce bottle, and I've limited my analysis to just this one item. Know that I could do it for any range of items as well. Go ahead and just hit process and show the details, and we'll go take a look at the report that comes out. This is a crystal report that ships with the product that can be modified to look any way you want it to look. Specifically, the first thing we notice is the calculated cost is $11.04 each, which would be a case, in this case, of this particular product, the 12-ounce IPA bottles. The first few line items on the cost roll-up are actually the packaging components. So we have the bottle, the label, the case shipper, six-pack carrier, crown, etc. So these are all items that are associated with this specific finished good. Below that, we've actually got what we refer to as an additional cost. This is a bill of material runtime cost, which basically says that for every case that I produce, I want to add a certain amount of burden. That may be represented the labor associated with packaging. It could also be overhead, machine costs, etc. And I can have as many of these additional costs as I would like attached to a finished good. So I may have one cost for bottling, a different cost for in my can line, a different cost for my keg line, etc. So know that we've added now packaging costs as well as the packaging bill of material costs, as well as the packaging effort and overhead associated with this item. And then I also add bright beer to this example. And so if I look at that, the $3.47 plus the $1.42, etc., that's what totals my $11.04. Now for me to make bright beer, the system is actually drilling down through bright beer to determine that I need wort, and it tells me how I make the wort. So I pick up my various malts and water and hops, etc., and I'm adding those costs associated with making of the wort, which goes to make the bright beer. So each of these ingredients are actually part of the formula or the recipe to make wort at some rate. So in other words, weight and volumes are associated here. Cost per unit, these are coming directly from the financial system. So when I issue a purchase order and I receive malt in, the system is automatically self-updating and self-adjusting the cost per unit based on my actual costs that I incurred. And then of course the extended cost is the cost expressed in a case of beer, finished beer, that goes into the wort, which goes into the bright beer, which goes into the bottle. So it truly is a roll-up of costs on a theoretical basis, assuming the last cost in this scenario, as well as assuming standard losses and standard yields that I've got built within the formula. So this is basically the brew house that we're looking at. I've also chosen to add some cost associated with the brew house, and I can calculate the amount of effort in the brew house and a cost per unit. I'm actually costing the brew house out at a value of $250 an hour of runtime hours. That would of course be more than just labor. It would be overhead that's added to it, etc. I also continue down in the fermentation process, and I've got an inventory item called yeast that I'll pitch and then reclaim later. And then I've also got an additional cost for the fermentation, in which case I've calculated a rate of $5 an hour. That'd be just a 24-hour clock hour in my scenario as I've set it up. And the fermenter will be occupied for a certain period of time during the fermentation process process, I'm looking at a 20-day fermentation at 24 hours a day, etc. And that's how I came up with those numbers. So the point here is that as you set up the formula and as you set up your inventory items, the system will automatically be in a position to calculate the theoretical costs for you, and we've got a tool that takes care of that. In this case, it calculated at $11.04. We also have the ability to look at all this in a summary basis as well. So I just went to the last page of this report, and so for this one item, we're looking at a material cost. This is basically all purchased ingredients excluding packaging. So this is my hops and malt and yeast and water and etc. It's $1.40 a case. I've got an additional cost associated with processing the beer. In other words, not packaging, but the brew house and the fermentation tank of $2.07. And then I get into my packaging. So my bottle cap, labels, etc. is costing me $6.15 a case, and then I've got some packaging labor associated with that, or packaging cost, maybe labor, overhead, machine time, those type of things, bringing me to my $11.04. So as you can see, it's rather easy, straightforward to get a theoretical cost of production within Vicinity. Now there's another concept that I'd like to discuss, and that is we have a number of breweries that occasionally will want to know what happens if a cost of this item or these items changes, increases or decreases. What will that do to my theoretical cost of one or more items? And so with that said, I'm going to introduce a concept of proposed costs. Now proposed costs are set up by the user. You can have as many of these as you would like. I've got one set up right here called 6-month projection. Go ahead and pick that up, and what this is showing me are items that I want to analyze further. In other words, I'm proposing that a cost out in the future, in this case based on my description 6 months from now, will be this cost. I'm also seeing the costs that I've seen in the past or in other systems. So Dynamics is my inventory system, the accounting system. So the accounting system's last cost is $16.36 for this hops. It's going to $28, etc. And there's tools and feature functionality to help you calculate these costs based on history, build it up by a factor, and then you can actually come in and manually override the cost for a single item. Now this isn't actually doing anything to your financial system. It's just building a proposed cost list, and when I do a cost roll up, any raw material item that is in this list can have this cost, this new proposed cost, used instead of the financial cost. So let's actually see that in operation. So we've got that bottle now that was at 14 cents and it will now be at 25 cents. So let's go ahead and just rerun that cost roll up, and we'll actually see that our bottle, which is right here, ends up going up to the new cost per unit. Oops. And actually, once I pick up my proposed costs, it goes from 14 cents up to my new proposed cost of 25 cents a unit, and therefore I'm able to see that the new theoretical cost will actually be $13.86 per case. Now I can take it one step further, and if I wanted to see this across the board for multiple products, I can just deal with my restriction, and I'm going to just drop in my my can that I've got here for the same product. And so there's the can, and I'm just going to go and look at my bottle and can together, and instead of looking at it in detail, I'm going to go ahead and look at it one line each so I can get a quick, easy view of what those costs are going to be. So the first line is my bottle, and I see the cost change for the bottle, and the next line is the can, the case of cans. So I'm able to analyze a number of items simultaneously. This information you can do other things with, like take it out to Excel and do further analysis. So that's the conversation on theoretical costs. Know that the system is calculating actual costs behind the scenes as well, but to help you build pricing out into the future, those are some really powerful tools that VicinityBrew brings to the table for a brewery.